Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With us today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, welcome to the program.
Happy Monday, Dr. Paul. We had a busy weekend, didn't we?
Good. And don't forget, tomorrow is Election Day.
Uh-oh.
I bet a lot of people are wondering what's going to happen.
Vote
but
hard.
We'll let out a couple hints, maybe tomorrow, of what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah.
So, but it's good to be back and ready to go.
Yeah, we had a great conference over the weekend. A lot of people came down to Lake Jackson. It was a lot. I had a lot of fun.
It's amazing. I didn't think they'd ever find Lake Jackson on the map, but
It's the city of enchantment.
we've had them come from far away places too.
Yeah, we did.
We had a good
Great
time
people,
too.
a lot of great
and they
people.
followed the rules. It's serious business, but you're supposed to have a little fun.
They seemed
too.
like they were having fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. It was great to meet them. So here we go. The first, we're going to talk about Finland, right?
Oh, yeah, we sure better, because it annoyed me this morning to no ends about Finland. It says the U.S. Greenlights guided rockets for Finland. You know, last week we reported that we were opening up the doors to supply things, and these are just follow up on their plans because it's so important for our national security, you know, that we have Finland armed. But they claim it's to bolster Europe's northern flank. But they also say, when they ask for the money and all, they also say, this is good for our national security. It's good for our national security, our economic progress, of course, for the military-industrial complex, and also, this is the stretch, political stability. They're going to do that too. But all of a sudden, there's a lot of money and there's expansion. It's no backing off. The progressives have caved. Nobody wants to talk peace, except most Americans, if you had a true poll.
Yeah.
And more than ever, because the economy is crashing because of this type of policy.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Paul, before I move on, I want to say something to our audience about a new sponsor for this program. We've talked about it a lot. We've had a couple of minor sponsors early on, but this is a real sponsor for the Ron Paul Liberty Report, and it's 4patriots.com. And I'll tell you a little bit about them. And one of the reasons we were excited about having them come on board and help us do the show is we understand the problems with food supply chain. We understand that we have a food security problem in the country. We know that drought and inflation and even some dumb economic policies that we talk about all the time could really affect the future, that, the healthfulness of the future. And that's why, obviously survival food is more important than ever. You have to survive. You have to look out for your family. You have to look out for hard times. One of the great things about 4patriots.com is you create your own stockpile of healthy and tasty food. It can last for 25 years in storage, so it'll last for a long time. It's packed right in a family-owned company. And why don't we put on that first clip if we can? This is 4patriots.com. They pack it in a family-owned facility in the United States. Over 200 Americans are working for the company. The kits are compact, they're sturdy, they're water resistant, they stack easily. And they have delicious breakfasts, lunches, and dinners. You can make one of these meals in just 20 minutes. And the thing that is really interesting is all you need is water, and you add it, and you simmer, and you serve. And the exciting thing is 1, 2, 3, survival food, a cinch to make. The great thing about this, if we could put on that bottom third if we have it here, is that right now you can go to 4patriots.com, use the code RON, R-O-N, type in RON at 4patriots.com, 10% off of your purchase of everything in the store, including, and let's put this next one up, your 3-month survival kit. And there's nothing wrong with having food for 3 months, Dr. Paul. And you get free shipping over $97 worth of purchases. They're called 4 Patriots, Dr. Paul, because they do donate a portion of their profits to to veteran-oriented groups to help out veterans. Let's take a final look at some of this food. In fact, I'm a little bit hungry. This looks pretty good to me right now. You've got Aztec chili with mango, black bean burger, cowboy rice and beans. I wouldn't mind sitting in a bunker if I had food like this. So anyway, thanks a lot to our sponsor. We appreciate it. We'll be talking a little bit more about them in the future. But Dr. Paul, back to the program. As you point out, They floated the idea of sending nuclear missiles to Finland. Finland said, hey, no problem. Put them on the border with Russia.
Yeah.
What could go wrong? And now they said, well, we won't do that. We're just going to put $500 million worth of regular missiles on the border. And as you say, it's a big boon. It's an economic boon for the military-industrial complex.
Yes, and it goes against some of the promises that we had been committed to since the breakdown of the Cold War, because we more or less promised that we would not be putting our troops and NATO up on their borders. And they don't talk a lot about the United States. We pay for everything, but it's always, the negotiations for the coup in 2014, it's best, I guess, to think NATO versus Russia. Of course, NATO is the United States, and there's the funding. And like you say, there's over $500 million, for these weapons. I keep asking myself, I like to try to figure out why are they doing this? It doesn't make sense. Are they really expecting an invasion? Are they really doing it for their national security or our national security, or what's going on? Because it leads to chaos. There's no benefit, it seems, from this, and it seems to be so destructive to do this, but they pursue this, and unfortunately the American people, for so long have gone along with it throughout my lifetime. They've always gone along with it. But, even today I look for the optimism, and we're having more and more people, as actually was discussed by a few people, in this campaign. At the same time, we see progressives whipping out and not even standing strong at all about why are we getting into an unnecessary war. And this is just a small step toward war, but it's a preparation that I think is wasteful and very dangerous.
You always talked about how disappointing it is that formerly neutral countries who benefited from neutrality have now all of a sudden decided to clamor for one side and to have a war stance against the other side, and it doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense. Finland's economy prospered a lot, partially because of the huge Russian tourism. Russians love to go over to Finland. Who knows what they did over there? They had a good time. Obviously, that's gone. So they basically kicked themselves in the face, not having, just destroying all of this tourism for what? For nothing. And we can actually put that next clip on if we can, what's showing the tank firing missiles. This is from Zero Hedge. To reiterate what you mentioned, State Department has approved the potential sale of $500 million worth of guided multiple launch rocket systems, GMLRS, and related equipment to Helsinki. And it's clearly, Dr. Paul, an escalation. There's just no way of getting around it. If the GMLRS or whatever were put on the border of Mexico and the U.S., and they were ready to fire into the U.S., into Texas, for example, obviously we would view it as an escalation. And the question really is why? What's the point of it?
If this was an honest approach to a very sincere effort for somebody to do great harm to the Scandinavian country or to us, that'd be understandable. But it makes everything worse.
Yeah.
And you add the complications of just our presence there and inciting more antagonism and more challenges with NATO and Russia. But what about our involvement? Of course, I think it's our involvement because we run the show and we have the money and the weapons. But it's also our involvement in the mess with the pipeline. Why would the German people go along with that? Of course, they're suffering from it now. But the pipelines get blown up, and if there had ever been a natural willingness to pursue free markets, it would have been after the Cold War. And Europe should have become good friends with Russia.
Yeah.
And I think the Russians were open to it. But no, the prevailing attitude of the hawks has had control of the media, and they said otherwise.
Yeah, they did. And in a related way, if we can put on that next one, this is what a lot of people are talking about this morning and yesterday. Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor to President Biden, a leaked report, I'm sure conveniently leaked, came out that he has held undisclosed talks with Putin's aides. I think he was apparently spoke to his counterpart in the Russian government. And the intent, according to these unnamed officials who reported to the Wall Street Journal, was to find ways of avoiding increasing escalation of the conflict. Now, I'm not sure I believe that. And one of the analysts I listen to a lot, I think he makes a good point, which is that these are the Clinton team. Jake Sullivan, Tony Blinken, Victoria Nuland. They don't know how to de-escalate. That's not in their DNA. They're only about escalation. They're neocons. They're about ramping it up. So the question is, why were they talking? As again, this analyst that I listen to, I think he makes a good point. Alex Cristoforo says it may be a warning from the U.S. to Russia that if you start this offensive, which we expect to happen, which we know there's been a buildup, they've brought in 300,000 troops in the partial mobilization. If you do this, these little tripwire Americans that you see over there in Western Ukraine, we're going to actually see a heck of a lot more of them coming in. We don't know if that's true or not, but we're speculating. Maybe that's what he's telling them. Whatever the case, the fact that Jake Sullivan is talking with his counterparts in Russia, normally in a normal world, would be an encouraging thing. In this case, I'm not so sure.
No, and that is a big problem because no matter what the announcements are and the pretense, you can almost just assume the opposite of what they're doing. But no, I just think that we are so much less likely to think that it's just purely a partisan system. And we do know, you mentioned who's really in charge from previous Democratic administrations. But are we home free if we just have a Republican foreign policy? I mean, that's where that was identified as the solid front. Was the Republican? They were the warmongers, and yet now it seems like on the surface you could make a case that they're stronger than ever.
Yeah.
And there's just a slight mention in the campaign. It's not going to be resolved tomorrow, with elections. Say, anybody who was supporting this war, they lost. It's such a way that the media pounds on the people if you don't go along with the warmongering stuff, which is tragic. So that's back to the old thing: who controls the message? It's the same principle that we had to deal with when we were dealing with the war on COVID. They scare people, and people have to go along, and it's a propagandist. And it's amazing to me that we can still reach those people. There's still a source of people out there that know what really is right, and that the war is not an answer to it, especially under today's condition. Why go out of their way to all of a sudden have a pretense that there's a nuclear confrontation in the next month or two? That's what they want you to believe, and things are dangerous. That's why we should be more sensible. Because it is so dangerous.
And for what? I mean, there is no Soviet Union. There's no great ideological struggle. So the question is, why? What's the purpose of all this nonsense? But our next story is somewhat related, I think, and this is and there are some good progressives out there, and we know them. And Aaron Maté is one of them, along with Max Blumenthal, Matt Taibbi, and a few others. But put up this next clip, because this is from his Substack. Pro-war hawks have progressives on their squad. And a lot of this is about the letter that was sent, and we have talked about it in the past. But the sad fact, the sad reality that within the Republican Party, as you suggested in your previous comment, there is a debate. And I feel a little bit optimistic, which goes against my nature, that there are young Republicans who hold the promise. Now, we don't know if they can withstand the slings and arrows once they get there. I think so far, Thomas Massie is one of the few who's been able to really hold tight. But there are people running, in Arizona and elsewhere who are questioning. And I think you wrote about today, Marjorie Taylor Greene said, if Republicans take over, not one more penny for Ukraine. I'm not so sure about that, but the fact that there is a debate, and this is what Aaron Maté is writing, there is a debate in the Republican Party. There's no such debate in the Democratic Party. Even the progressives that people like Aaron and others counted on to be in the anti-war camp have now completely given up and, joined the pro-war, got on top of tanks.
Since they are flexible, that we see they go back and forth, and the progressives aren't always progressive. But if the people would send a message to show that you don't win by just voting for more war automatically. Anything the military-industrial complex wants, you vote for it. And we've seen the switch. The progressives, are soft, and they were much better. I think when I was in office and we worked there,
especially when Bush was president. Yeah.
I think that they were. That's probably it. So the sincerity might be questioned, but. It also means that people change their tune because of for pragmatic political reasons, but they also will change their position. A few of them, when eventually the people wake up and you can appeal to some common sense. But right now, even the common sense of spending is just barely becoming the issue, and I don't know where they get this. Lackadaisical attitude about trillions and trillions of dollars of debt. We made a mistake. We'll go down. We're going to eliminate it. We're going to lower the deficit this year for $1 trillion. It's all this gimmickry stuff. But they throw $1 trillion around like it's nothing.
Yeah.
But it's going to be something big time though soon.
Yeah. Well, I think a good thing to remember is that our progressive friends like Aaron and the others, they're as dismayed as we are on the other side, perhaps, if you want to say it that way. They're dismayed that they look around and they don't have allies, or very few allies. We feel the same way, and I think that's one of the things that people may not understand is that the Ron Paul Institute is not a libertarian organization at all. It was explicitly formed to bring together that coalition, again, of progressives, conservatives, of libertarians, and others. That's the whole point of what we're doing, is to have a home for all of these, and that's why we have such a diverse board, in the real sense of the word, real diversity on our board, but united in the principles of opposing war and empire and understanding that brings prosperity. But this is from Aaron's piece, and it's just an example of the absurdity, if we can put that next clip up, the absurdity in U.S. Congress, the lack of seriousness in the U.S. Congress. Vladimir Putin would have signed that letter if asked. One member of the House Democratic leadership sneered to Politico, and that letter indeed is the very milquetoast letter that dozen or so progressives sent to Biden, and then they unsent it to Biden, and then they tried to get everyone to forget that they sent it to Biden. But Aaron makes the important point that, but if Putin would indeed sign on for a call of direct engagement in order to reduce harm and support Ukraine in achieving a peaceful settlement, which is what the letter said, it is unclear why that would be worthy of the senior lawmaker's opprobrium. So that is, so what if he would sign it? If de-escalates, if it brings peace, people stop dying, then so who cares if he'd sign it, Maybe the guy next door will sign it, the barber down the street, who cares?
The coalition that has been around, and it's still partially there, but it's become weaker. And that is, Republicans that have a anti-war instinct. We even saw that in the vote, on the war vote going into Iraq. But today, there's disorder in the Democratic Party. The progressives are all over the place, and leaving and changing. And I think that it's in disarray. But I don't think that means that we shouldn't have plans and efforts made to bring people together from different factions, because I still think that there will be constitutional conservatives that will be close to us. I think there will be Democrats, in spite of what's going on right now. There'll be a reassessment after the election, because if they, especially if some of those wishy-washy hawks, progressive switching over, if they lose, that might send a message. There's still a lot of independence in this country. That's why I think polling isn't really reliable as it used to be. Who really brags of what party they belong to? I don't know how these polls can be absolute. They recite them like they're absolutely accurate. You can't get anybody on a telephone or hardline.
No kidding.
So, but then you have people who are instinctively libertarian that. They might not be a Libertarian Party member, but the Libertarian message of leave us alone and we don't need to fight these wars. So I think people, the message is we have to bring people together in a coalition wherever we can find a sympathetic person, and we should assume everybody if they have the information and they have a little bit of common sense, they'll come around to the position that our organization has, that unnecessary war makes no sense at all. It's all a profit-making organization for the people who manufacture weapons, and that's the message, and that should wake up some people to come together for something that I consider very, very worthy, peace and prosperity. It's being constitutional. It makes a lot of economic sense. So I still think the opportunity is there is to continue our efforts.
Yes, and the other thing is there's nothing patriotic about defending and supporting the military-industrial complex, because you're getting corrupt people rich on the backs of the rest of the Americans. So there's a sense that being pro-military and pro-war is patriotic. Well, no, it is in a sense, but supporting the war machine like this is not at all patriotic. Well, the last piece we want to talk about today, under the general, I think, theme of escalation, has to do with a major dam in eastern Ukraine. And here we go. Russia says major dam hit by U.S.-supplied HIMARS rockets. And that's important because if these rockets that the U.S. is sending and presumably also providing targeting information with our vast intelligence capabilities, if they are looking to blow up infrastructure facilities like dams, which can have an enormous effect on civilians, it's a big problem because, like it or not, the ownership of those rockets is the U.S. The authorship of whatever happens when they blow it up is on the U.S., and it's, I think, a dangerous escalation, Dr. Paul.
Yeah, two things. Get rid of NATO, get us out of NATO, and come home and save our money. And a lot of people would benefit from this. But it is rather annoying when you realize that the civilians are the ones who are going to suffer. And it's sort of like excessive bombing during the war and only hitting civilian cities but that's been used a lot. If the people get hurt, they're going to change their home government. That's the way we've always argued over the years about Iran. If we punish the people, they'll get rid of their government. But there's been a dissent in Iran, and that usually unifies them. The opposite works on, so it doesn't work. But this whole idea that we can take the water away from Crimea, it'll backfire on them. And the full message isn't out yet how much damage was done. It's conceivable that they didn't close that. They didn't get the results because some of those missiles were intercepted. But I think you made the point right off the bat, which I think is important. In a very moral way, we're responsible. The American taxpayer is responsible. Our politicians are responsible. Our military is responsible because we support all of this, even though fortunately we have no Americans dying on this like we did in Vietnam. But that's a half of a message, really. But we should think of all people unnecessarily being killed in war as the issue, not only the people that we finance. And I'll tell you, it's really, really a shame that so many people go along with this so casually.
Yeah.
And yet this problem's been around for a while.
Yeah, it has. And we can put up that next clip. It's just a map of where this dam is, and you can see a lot of water is going to spill out, and it's going to drown a lot of people if it happens. And indeed, these numbers come from the Russian government, so we have no idea how accurate they are, but they claim out of 6 rockets that were launched, only 1 hit the target. Of course, they're apt to exaggerate the efficiency of their anti-missile capabilities, but it does supply water to Crimea. But the other thing that's so weird, and you talked about it before, and they've done this before, the claim now is, well, Russia's bombing the dam. Russia's bombing the dam. It's absolutely objectively true that they control that dam and they control that area. So the idea, again, just the same with the nuclear power plant, which they control, the idea that they would bomb themselves, it kind of stretches credibility to suggest that maybe they are that dumb that they will just, hey, let's drop some bombs on our own guys. That might be fun. But the fact is, it seems like pretty crude propaganda to me.
Yeah, that is just amazing. It was sort of like trying to prove the Russians destroyed their pipeline. To go to that extent. But it makes no sense. But the big picture makes no sense either. Then the strategy makes no sense. And sometimes I am just dumbfounded why the European people just roll over on anything that the globalists who find themselves really in charge of the empire, which means NATO, United Nations, and our money, they just go along with it. But it just has made no sense. They're all worrying about being warm this winter and finding food. It just goes on and on every day. There's more potential negative stuff out there, and as long as the policies don't change, it's going to keep getting worse.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm going to close out by returning, now that we've got our conferences done and out of the way, I want to return to, if we can put that last clip up, to remind our audience to join the Ron Paul community on Locals. If you're watching this on Rumble, it's easy just to click that. You can be a paid subscriber or an unpaid, a free subscriber. But to join, that's our hangout, that's our community. We're going to be able to focus a lot more on Locals now that we can catch our breath, now that the conference is over. And thank you, all of you that came out to the conference, all of you that support us and watch the program. We're moving ahead. We're getting a lot bigger numbers, and it's thanks to you. So we appreciate that. Dr. Paul?
Very good. And I, too, want to thank those of you who tuned in today and didn't make it to our conference, and all those of you who did, because we think that is very, very worthwhile. It gives us encouragement. You know, most people are so appreciative of coming and getting information and meeting other people, but I'll tell you what, I appreciate the people who support us, because it's very, very good for us to have that support, not only financially. Matter of fact, it's the encouragement that we get. So we're delighted to do it. So we're gonna be around, and we're gonna be watching closely. It'll be interesting tomorrow, because after the election there will be a lot of talk and anticipation and figuring what's happening, and we might. We won't have all the answers tomorrow, of course, but the next day we're going to have, I'm sure, a few comments to make about what we think can and will happen with elections like this, because they are special. Maybe this one will be a little bit different. Maybe it will have a lot more significance than most of them, because for the most part I've been pretty cynical. The more we change the political parties, the more the political parties get the same. But the lines are a little bit sharply drawn right this time, so we'll be anxious to see it, and hopefully we'll move in the right direction. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.